Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted from my studios in Columbus, Ohio. I'm wearing a neutral hat today. You all know I'm a Carolina fan. My guest is a graduate of Duke. This is going to be hard. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so honored tonight to speak to Kat Zempolich. Did I get it right, Kat?
You did, yes.
I did. Okay,
Crushed
good,
it.
awesome. Kat Zempolich. She is the co-founder, treasurer, director of podcasting, and the co-host of the Mental Matchup. But most importantly, all of those things are with Morgan's Message. And tonight we're really going to kind of get into the weeds a little bit and talk about Morgan's Message and really a bigger conversation about suicide prevention and suicide and mental health and all those things. So I'm just so honored tonight that you would join us. And all kidding aside, UNC Duke, all that's out the window because tonight's a much bigger topic. So welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me and for, having the space to facilitate the conversation. I'm Kat. I grew up in Northern Virginia, played lacrosse at Duke, graduated undergrad in 2018, did a year of business school at the Fuqua School of Business, stayed at Duke for an extra year, and then graduated and have been, working in, the corporate big girl world since then. And I was lucky enough to be part of a group that helped form Morgan's Message in honor of one of our friends and former teammate at Duke, Morgan Rogers, who died by suicide in July of 2019. And yeah, it's a little elevator pitch on who I am and kind of what I've done and what I do.
I love it. And well, I don't love, obviously, when I say that, anyway, we get it. I want to put a few things out there. I emailed you earlier today. Just set the groundwork. I'm probably going to cry because it's the welcome to Unscripted, and I'm an empath, and that happens. It's pretty much on brand for that to happen. But I do want to get into Morgan's story. But first, let's talk about yours. So you grew up in Virginia. How did you end up at Duke?
I come from a family of Duke people. My dad went to Duke, my uncle and my aunt. My dad is not an athlete. My uncle did like a short stint on the football team, but played baseball. And then my aunt is just like wicked smart. She, I think, got into Duke medical school like her sophomore year of undergrad. And yeah, she's like a leading surgeon out in the Midwest. But anyway, born and bred. I mean, I was watching JJ Redick out of my living room and had the biggest crush. And he was like, I had to be number 4 for a while or 14 because of JJ. Maybe it was 4. I don't know at this point. I was 6. But yeah, I just grew up loving Duke, and then ultimately kind of got to high school and realized that my academics could get me going places. I knew I wanted to play sports in college. I didn't know if I was good enough at the sports I played to let that get me into school. And so I kind of leveraged the fact that I had good grades and I was like above average. I wasn't a standout, but I was definitely could hold my own. And the opportunity to be a recruited walk-on came across my plate at Duke. All I had to do was get into the school and got in and kind of never looked back. I kind of always knew it was going to be Duke. If it wasn't Duke, my top choice was UVA, which I don't think I would have fit into UVA. It was a lot of like in-state kids, and I really was craving a new environment where I went to school and didn't really know anyone, because I had grown up in somewhat of, I would say, like a sheltered environment where everyone was from, upper middle class, like white. It was very much so the status quo. And so I wanted to discover other things outside of that and, start experiencing different like cultures. And yeah.
If North Carolina would have recruited you, would you have gone to North Carolina?
No. No. I mean, no. no.
Okay,
There's no way.
fine.
My
This
dad
is
probably
fine.
would have had a heart attack. I wouldn't have
That's
been
fine.
recruited. I was not recruited, and I would not have been recruited. So that wasn't even an option. But no, answer still. No.
That's fine. Thank you for your honesty. I have one daughter that received mail from University of North Carolina, and her grades would have gotten her in there, but she chose another path, and that's fine. Not Duke, because she went to somewhere in Indiana. So anyway, all right. I wanted to cover one more thing before we really get into Morgan's message, which is why we're here tonight. You have a podcast, which is awesome. It's called Mental Matchup. I listened to several episodes today. Can you talk a little bit about the Mental Matchup podcast?
Yeah. Funny enough, the Mental Matchup, the concept of it was the original Morgan's message concept. So initially, we had kind of set out on a path to destigmatize mental health and get people talking about these stories, and thought the easiest way to do that would be to hear from people who have been through similar things to what other people are going through. And that's where the concept of this podcast came about. And it was a little harder to get up off the ground, figuring out how do you run a podcast? How do you get guests on? How do you get word of mouth out? But ultimately, what our goal is on the Mental Matchup is to just amplify stories surrounding whether it be athletes, student athletes, psychologists who are in the field, coaches, whatever we can do to get as many unique point of views as possible, so that anyone at any given time can click in an episode, or click through episodes and be like, wow, this looks like something I've been going through. Let me listen in and, feel that bit of hope. Because I think in my own personal experience and from just listening to other experiences, a lot of times, mental health can be really scary because it feels like you're the only one going through it. And so with the Mental Matchup, we're able to kind of put out stories that show you're not the only one, like in a good and bad way, right? Like you're not the only one. There are other people who have gotten through this and who have gone through these things, and we can learn from them, and it's okay to ask for help. And, I always say, like, the bad thing is, like, I wish people weren't going through this, but ultimately, we're working towards changing that, but that's just a sad reality at this moment.
Yeah. But I am thankful that we're in a time and an age where Morgan's message and many others are shining a light on this. This is no longer something you're dealing with alone. There are opportunities out there. Kevin Love, I live in Ohio. I'm from Cleveland originally. Kevin Love was one of the first NBA players to come out and say, and shine a light on his mental illness, the struggles that he's had. I love that people that are in the spotlight are now saying, I'm not okay, and that's okay. I think they're giving a path for others. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate that about your podcast. So where can they find the podcast?
You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then you can head to thementalmatchup.com if you want to submit a story or come on the podcast or learn a little bit more about what we're doing over there.
Love it. And that's not why we got on tonight. So I appreciate you walking through that, but it is important because these things all tie together. So I think the best way, unless you think otherwise, let's start at the beginning. When did you meet Morgan? Let's just start at the beginning. How did you meet her? When did you meet her? And let's just kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, and Morgan grew up not quite in Northern Virginia. We're kind of snobby about the lines in Virginia. There's Northern Virginia and then there's everything else. And she grew up about 25 minutes down the road from me. And I had always heard about her. She played for a club that was near me. I had a ton of friends who played for that club lacrosse, kind of like travel lacrosse. And I'd always heard about her. She was just this like freak athlete. That's all I would hear. It was like, oh, this freak athlete. She's so fast. She's so good. She's looking at a ton of these schools. Like she might be going to Duke, blah, blah, blah. Kind of hearing like, whispers and rumors. And I am the year above her. So I had my freshman year under my belt. And then the next year, Morgan came in as a freshman. And so I had heard a lot of hype around her. And boy, did she live up to the freak athlete hype. I mean, this girl was the most competitive, wouldn't take a play off. She was so fast. She was just ready to get after it. She was so energetic, kind of just like this bright, bubbly ray of sunshine, almost to a certain extent where like my sophomore year, I was like, is this girl serious? Like, how is she always like happy and hyper all the time? I'm like, it's 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. Like, I want to be in my bed right now. Why is she like that kind of personality that you almost, it was like electric, like you would kind of feed into it.
Right.
Yeah. And that was kind of how we met, was just, you know, at practice at Duke, and formed a great friendship. She was awesome.
And so just for anybody that's not familiar with her story, she suffered an injury. When did the injury happen?
The injury happened my junior year, her sophomore year. And to give you background, her freshman year, she didn't play much. I was a sophomore. I ended up getting injured and had a hip surgery. So I was kind of in and out at practices, like showing up and supporting, but, you know, also doing rehab and not being able to be out there and play. She was kind of going through the freshman transition where some people come in and they can hit the field. They're like, you know, just built different. Like, it's normally 1 or 2 freshmen a year because college lacrosse is so different than high school lacrosse. And then usually sophomore years where that split becomes apparent, where, you know, like those girls that are ready to step up can step up into those roles. And I came in my junior year, Morgan was a sophomore, and she was one of those just like studs. She had worked really hard all summer. She knew what it was going to take to get on the field after having that year under her belt. And she wasn't going to accept anything less than getting as much playing time as possible. Like, I would say she's probably someone who, she was literally like, the coaches would, I'm assuming her mindset was, the coaches are going to look like fools if I'm not on the field. Like, that's how hard she was going to work. And that's what she was going to do to get there. She came in and she just absolutely ripped people to shreds. I mean, I remember this one fall ball game, we were playing Florida. She was just a maniac. She was everywhere, all over the field. She scored probably like 7 goals playing midfield, like just insane. And so she came back after fall break for preseason, and same tenacity, like getting after it. You knew she was going to be on the starting line. It was just like, there's no question about it. And January, we were on like our practice field, and I was in and out. My hip was still hurting me, so was kind of like watching practices at this point. And I was on the opposite side of the field. I saw her go down, and it was like the most, like, the scream that came out of her mouth. She tried to it was terrifying. And we kind of knew that she probably had a really long road ahead of her. She tore everything off her bone, like so ACL and everything. Her knee had to be completely reconstructed. So you take this kid who, even when she's not playing, she's the best athlete on the field, right? She can pick up a ball. She can be good at anything. That's kind of always been her identity. And then she gets a knee surgery and she's on a scooter for 8 weeks, non-weight bearing. Like, everything that she knew to be true about her was just kind of taken away. And I think that resonates for me when I was injured. And I think that resonates for a lot of athletes who get injured. It's like, what am I without the sport? Right. Because for so long growing up, you're praised for being either the best kid on the field or in the classroom, but for student athletes, a lot of the time it's on the field, right? Like, you're always the best. You don't really have adversity when it comes to like being injured. Maybe you have an off game, but like, you can always get better the next day, come back, show up different. Like, that was completely taken away from her. And I think that, you know, that part of being injured, that was like the first kind of start of the journey to like healing and ultimately like her mental health journey.
Did you ever sense, so we've established a few things, and this is why I want to kind of take this in segments and little almost bite-sized pieces, because you mentioned she was full of joy and that you've never been around someone with so much energy. So that was her freshman year. Sophomore year. So again, you've said it so eloquently, because I think many people listening, I have 3 athletes in my home. we identify, I don't think parents do that intentionally. It's just what our kids pour into, we're excited about. And so we praise those things. And I think they probably identify with them because we praise that which they do, if that makes sense. And every weekend and every night and all those different things, it's always practice or weekends or tournaments or whatever. But it's very interesting that you mentioned, so all of a sudden that's gone. And so let's go into the next segment, because it sounds like that was, you said it a minute ago, that was kind of the start of her journey. Maybe we'll never know, but that led her to, obviously a struggle. It was taken away from her. So where did she go from there? Like, what was next?
Yeah, it was a lot of rehab. It was starting from ground zero. She tried to put on a brave face. The first few weeks on the scooter were rough. They were really rough. And she was in a lot of pain, like constantly in pain, had a ton of trouble sleeping, like couldn't make it to class, was so low energy. And ultimately, that spring was really hard for her. And she took summer classes at Duke to try to catch up, because there were some classes she couldn't finish in the spring because of like the injury and the medication. And it almost was like this downward spiral of just like everything was it wasn't aligned. It was just, everything was almost like falling through the floor. She took summer classes. She came back in the fall, and she was better, but she wasn't quite right, if that makes sense. Like, sure. You could kind of still tell she was in a little bit of like pain. Her knee was uncomfortable. She didn't quite know what it was. She wasn't like Morgan. Like, she wasn't like her freshman year self or her like sophomore fall self or pre-injury. There was still a little bit like of sadness. You couldn't really like pin it down. I, at the same time, was going through my own mental health struggles. And so I kind of was, watching from afar while I was trying to get help. But it was like those like 9 months. I mean, that probably like year and a half from that injury was really, really hard for her.
Can we put a pin in that conversation? You talked about your own, so let's talk about yours. What did you find in your journey, if you don't mind sharing? What did you find in your journey? Because, I think this is important for not just Division I athletes, any athlete, anyone listening to this, whether it's a corporate CEO or Division I athlete. What did you find as you were in the struggle?
Yeah. I would say mine kind of relates to my injury too. I redshirted, got a surgery, thought I was healing, thought I was going to come back better than ever. And ultimately my same hip that I had gotten done cartilage was deteriorating, had to get a second surgery. I was in pain all the time. My hip would just give out. And I decided to finish out my junior year season kind of in and out on the field. I had to switch positions because I couldn't stay in a defensive position for longer than 30 minutes in a practice. I couldn't make it through practice. I got the second surgery, and I was not in a good place. I automatically, it would either be I'd be rehabbing or I'd be on my couch watching TV or sleeping. I probably slept like 70% of the days. I wasn't really going to see my friends, but I didn't quite know what it was. Like, what I had chalked it up to at the time was like, well, I'm sad because I had to be on crutches for 2 months. I can't really move. I have the second surgery, I'm down in Duke, and everyone can like go have fun and sit at the pool. And it's a struggle for me to get down the stairs. And I was like, and that makes sense. But I didn't really know. I thought I was like healing, and that was part of why I was sleeping so much. And a lot of these things weren't really connecting. And I had struggled with anxiety and depression before in high school. And ultimately when I started realizing I was really struggling was I would drive home, during summer school, I would drive back to Virginia to see my parents. And I'd be like, well, I can just drive off the bridge here. Like I could totally be done with this. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Like I almost felt like numb, and that I was just in this fog. Like I was watching my life as like a third party. And fast forward, I was feeling that for probably like 3 months, didn't action on it, had come back to school. One of my best friends who had graduated the previous year was visiting, and it was like a big drinking weekend. And I had been like kind of binge drinking, not kind of, but like that was how I was kind of coping with some of the pain. And she had gone home. I had gone to bed that Sunday night. That Monday, I had a breakdown at our law school cafeteria, and I was sitting with I live with her now, but one of my best friends on the team. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, I need you to drive me to the airport. And she was like, what? And I was like, I need to go home, or I don't think I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And she was like, oh my God, what? And I was like, Maddie, I just have a really bad feeling. I think I need to get help. I don't know what that looks like, but like, I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to figure it out up in Virginia. I can't figure it out down here. Right. And she was like, okay, we need to go like tell our coaches that I'm driving you. Like, we'll get you there, yada, yada, but you have to tell them that you're leaving. And I was like, okay. So I went, got on a plane. My mom's like a PA. So she's very involved in the medical world in Northern Virginia. She called, I think, everyone she could to see like who was the best psychiatrist to get me into and when their first appointment was, and pulled a lot of strings and had a lot of favors called in for me to see this psychiatrist, Colleen Blanchfield, I think her name is. And she like saved my life. I mean, she sat me down, she pulled out this iPad and she drew a ton of squigglies and like drew out the serotonin. And she was like, this is what's happening in your brain right now. You've had 2 surgeries where they've completely shut your brain down for 3 hours. You have to restart your brain again. All your chemicals are imbalanced. Like, this is why you're feeling this way. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. Right. And I remember being like, oh my God, it's fixable. Like, oh my God, I'm not insane. Like, that was like, I was sitting there with my mom and I was like, holy shit, I'm not a crazy person. Like there's a chemical imbalance in my brain, and this is why I'm feeling this way. And this is what we're going to do to get me better. And that was like, when I was like, okay, I have like hope. Like, I know that I'm going to get on a plane tonight. I'm going to get picked up at the airport and like things are going to change. Like, and that was it still wasn't easy that fall. Like my medication, I had to switch to another one because it didn't mesh well. I was sleeping through things, but ultimately I felt 10 times better, and I felt heard, and I felt seen, and I felt like there was a path forward for me.
Thank you. Because, we have the benefit of hearing your voice and seeing you. I'm looking at you right now. People are hearing your voice on audio. We have that benefit because you're still here. You know what I mean? Like you were able to find the help that you needed. And I think that's important for us to mention right now is if you're listening to this or know someone, see signs in someone, there is help available, and it's okay. It's okay. And I think that's so important for people to know. You're not a failure. You're not weak. If you're a guy, you're not weak. We saw last year one of the OSU football players quit playing football and went public with his own, I don't remember the what they called it, but he retired, medically retired, maybe. I can't remember what they called it. But conversely, we also saw a few players now. I think there's one at JMU that took her life. And
Lauren. Yeah.
Yes. So like, if you're hearing this, it's okay to admit I'm not okay. I'm 30 miles further down the freeway than you are. And I use freeway because I mentioned this a few weeks ago on social media during Suicide Prevention Month. I used to drive home. It's so funny you said bridge, because I could tell you exactly where I would drive home. Every time I would drive home to Cleveland, it was a 2-hour drive. I could tell you the bridge and the moment every time I drove home. Like you said, I was in a fog. I was depressed. I didn't know what the issues were. This is long before all these conversations that you and I are having. And I knew I had to talk myself out of it every time I drove home. And, I'm thankful I'm here today because I have 3 kids and a beautiful wife and a home, and I get to talk to you tonight because I didn't make that decision. And that's what I want so desperately for people, is to not make that decision. So thank you for sharing your journey too, for anyone that might be listening. And I hate to transition quickly, but we only have so much time tonight, and I actually have all the time in the world for this conversation. But so let's go back to Morgan. And again, I hope you hear that I'm so glad that I'm talking to you tonight, and that you were able to find the help that you needed, and now you're making a difference for other people. That's so awesome. It's really important that you know that.
Hey everyone, my name is Cami Pranel, and I'm the Executive Director for Unscripted. We hope you are enjoying today's interview. Unscripted is dedicated to helping others find their voice, passion, and follow their dreams. Our team can help create websites, apps, YouTube channels, podcasts, media, and social content. Whatever your passion and vision, we can help. Our good friend Manny Ahome of Samaritan's Feet once said, "Make sure your dreams and goals are big enough to create room for others to join you." We've created room for you to join us too. Find out more at myunscripted.com. Now let's join Aaron for the second half of today's interview.
So let's go back to Morgan's story. So she's struggling. You're seeing it. Are you identifying that I think you said it, something's not right. She's not the same. Was that just physically or the other attributes as well?
It was both. And that fall was tough. She kind of retreated from her friends. Like, she wasn't as social as she had been. School was tough. Lacrosse, she wasn't necessarily cleared to play. So it still was like, she still wasn't 100% in there. And to even fast forward to January after winter break, it got even worse. And it came to a point where, school wasn't going great, and lacrosse wasn't an option to play. Because I might be misspeaking, but it was in part because of her injury. She still wasn't cleared to do contact, and bottom line though, she made the decision to ultimately take the semester off and go home and figure out, how to heal, how to get better, kind of take her out of the Duke environment and put her into being at home, focusing on her health and focusing on not doing school, just sticking to easier digestible things. And so she spent the spring coaching and healing, rehabbing with her doctors at home, seeing her therapist. And I ended up graduating, because I was a senior that year, and Duke has, and I hope they've changed it, but they have this, I don't care, dumbass policy where if you're on leave of absence, you can't come on campus. And if you come on campus, you won't be invited back. There's some crazy rule. And I'm people, most of the time when they're taking time off, it's because something bigger is going on.
Right.
And the most important thing you can do is be surrounded by people who love you. And if that means they need to make a trip to Duke for the weekend, they shouldn't be barred, or that's my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
And so she wasn't allowed to come to campus. But I ended up coaching with her that summer when I was at home. And when I tell you, she was back. She looked good. She looked healthy. She kind of lost some weight over the course of her injury because she wasn't able to lift. And Morgan's all muscle or skin and bones. And so she had lost that muscle. She gained it back over that summer. She was happy. She was bubbly. She was bouncing around. She was excited about the future and about going back to school. And I was like, holy shit, Morgan is back. I'm pumped for her. This is awesome. She's ready to just do it up this last season that she has and graduate and move on to bigger and better things. And I remember even telling my coach that, I was yeah, I saw Morgan this summer. She looks great. She's healed up. She reminds me of freshman year Morgan. She's back. She gets back to school. And to put it gently, like, and I was there for Fuqua, I don't think the environment was serving her properly. I think that, you know, mental health is hard, and there were some people she had pushed away, and there was some friction in terms of gelling on the team with girls in her grade, and things were just tough. And she kind of reverted back to previous Morgan, who, you know, kind of withdrew, wasn't herself, was in and out of lacrosse. Like, there were some things happening with her knee again. And ultimately, you know, that fall was really hard for her. And she decided that December that she wasn't going to come back to the team, and that she was walking away, head held high. She was going to focus on being a student and then playing, you know, club lacrosse and just having fun with the sport again, and not putting all this pressure on herself. And when I tell you, too, that spring, it was like she was back. Like, I would have, you know, biweekly, weekly dinners with her. She would make food. We would hang out. It was like less stress. She was so happy to be a student. There was light in her eyes again. And I was really happy for her and what she was doing. She did have to do another semester. So when I graduated Fuqua, she knew, you know, the next year she was going to have to do a fall semester, and then she'd be done with undergrad. And I just remember thinking back to that period of time as being like, wow, Morgan seems really happy. Like, she seems like she's finally in a good place. Like, sometimes sports aren't for everyone. Sometimes you have to walk away in order to, like, you know, really enjoy life to the fullest. And it was July of that year, like July of 2019. I was driving and I got a text from my coach, and it was like this group chat message that, like, Morgan had passed. And I remember pulling the car over and being like, this isn't a funny joke. Right. Like, what the hell? Like, this isn't funny. And, like, that was my automatic, like, this is not cool. And I called my friend, like my teammate in my grade. And I was like, hey, like, that's what's going on. Like, have you heard anything? Like, this is, like, not, like, I don't understand if someone told her something, like, the wrong information. And my friend was like, Kat, like, it's, like, actually it happened. Wow. And I was like, what? And just kind of, like, went into shock and went numb, like, turned my phone off, drove the car home, kind of sat in my driveway, and then was like, this can't be real though. Like, Morgan's going to call, Morgan's going to text. It's all a misunderstanding. Yeah. Maybe she just, like, what, like, I just remember thinking, like, anything else. Right. And that, I think, is, like, one of the bigger lessons I've learned, is that, like, someone can appear to be so happy. Right. And someone can appear to be, like, right back on track, and it can all be a facade. And Morgan really, really did a good job of hiding all the pain she was in, because she must have been in so much pain. Right. And I watched it for a while, and then, you know, that spring, like, it didn't see it surface level. Right. And I even would ask her, like, how are you actually doing? And, you know, she'd be like, yeah, some things are harder than others. But she wasn't that forthcoming with information. She tried to put on that happy face all the time. And yeah, it was really, really tough. I mean, I know, like, you know, her parents and her brother and her twin sister, like, I can't imagine what it was like for them. Just, like, amplifying, you know, what I was personally feeling. It's just, yeah, it was really, really hard.
Kat, I have to tell you, like, thank you again for your vulnerability to tell us your story, and share Morgan's, because I think it's important that, you know, anyone listening to this, I have a feeling, and we are going to turn a corner, because there are great things that are happening, unfortunately, in her passing, but there are amazing things that you all are doing, and I really want to share that. So please, if anyone's listening, stick with us, because we are going to turn a corner in a minute. But I think I wanted to go through all that, and thank you for doing that, because it's important for us to realize, I've been in counseling at times. I've struggled at times. You've shared, you know, your struggles. Morgan was clearly going through hers. I think you said it a minute ago, like, we don't always know the brains and the thoughts and the struggles of other people, because we all put on this facade and we, you know, what I mean, we never know the struggles. And that's why podcasts like this one and the one that you do and the awareness, it's more than a hashtag. It's giving people the gift of saying it's okay to share with someone, you know what I mean? Because we're all so trying to live in this Instagram filtered world where our lives are perfect when they're not. And I was going to ask you, I think you covered it a little bit. There was really no signs or there wasn't a red flag for you that said, you know what, if anything, it sounds like she was doing great. Your thought was that she was doing great. So I think that's the awareness I want people to have, is just because something looks a certain way, if you feel a check in your spirit, you got to check with people, like ask questions, right? Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think for context, the weekend before, you know, she died by suicide, she was on vacation with her family on their annual vacation.
Who would know?
She was happy. The photos, like they had, it was like, I mean, it wasn't a blindsiding from like Morgan's perspective. I think that she had probably been planning on, you know, doing something. But no one had any inclination. Like they were on vacation. She was like, I have to go run by my apartment to pack up some things from the year. Dad, can I take your truck? I'll be home, you know, on Tuesday or on Monday. And so I think that too, like, you know, the people who were closest to her were with her and had no idea, which I think is really scary, right? Like people can be really good at hiding the pain they're going through.
And I don't want to move. We could spend a lot of time talking about this, but I do think we should now let's get to, you know, the morning, I'm sure, was brutal. I can't imagine her parents, as a parent of 3 children that are, you know, roughly in that age. I just can't get my head around the pain of that. As a teammate, as a friend, I lost 2 of my best friends in college in my senior year in a car accident. And I still, to this day, I don't know if I'll ever get over it. You know, they were my teammates, my friends, and I miss them. So I don't want to move on, and I'm sorry we took the time that we did in that, but I think it's so important in this conversation. The context is incredibly important. So in her passing, you all have set up the foundation, Morgan's Message, and now we turn that corner, because I can tell you that, and I sent you a video or an audio clip, in our little high school right here in town, one of our high schools, I don't know about the other 2, we have 3. I know our high school just last weekend put a butterfly on their helmets, and they honored Morgan and Morgan's Message. And one of our athletes, a soccer player who unfortunately was injured, came to the football team and shared Morgan's Message with them. And they're all wearing bracelets now. I know there's a conversation that took place in the high school. That ripple effect, while so tragic, losing Morgan, has to be so impactful for you all, that what you started, it's not just local. This is not a small thing. This is a movement. Is that fair to say? Like, can you just talk a little bit about Morgan's Message and the foundation?
Yeah, definitely. And what I want to preface this by was it all started, for me at least, with, it was probably the scariest text I've ever sent in my life, but about 10 months after Morgan had passed, it was coming up on her birthday, and her grave is closer to my house, and I wanted to go visit her, and so did one of my teammates who was also living in the area. And I texted Donna, Morgan's mom, and I remember being like, should I text her? Should I not text her? She probably doesn't want to hear from me. Like, I can't imagine like what she's been going through, what she's still going through. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I want to go see Morgan. I'm just going to send this. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse. But I sent a text, and I got a text back, and I was like, oh my God, can I go? Like, then I was like, I don't know if I have the courage to go. Like, I don't know if I have the courage to go see Donna and like see Morgan and kind of feel her pain. Cause the last time I'd seen her was at the memorial, and we went, and holy shit, it was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done in my life. I mean, I saw, her brother, her twin sister. I saw Donna. I was standing by the grave looking at, Morgan, and it was just so hard. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of awkward too, right? Like my mom kind of drove my friend and I, because I was like, Mom, I can't drive back. Right. There's no way I can drive there. If I drive there, I'm going to turn around. Like, I'm not going to be able to get there. I need you to drive me. If, my mom took the day off of work, it was like, we're going, you need to see Morgan. And Donna invited us back to the house to see Morgan's garden. And that was where the conversation started. Was my teammate Anna and I both were like, there needs to be more done. Like, Anna and I are sitting here saying that we struggled with, mental health in college, and like, we felt like we didn't have any support. Morgan clearly struggled with it and felt like she couldn't speak up or have support. And we know so many people on our team, on different teams, that felt the same way. Like, what can we do? Like, what can we do so that no one else has to, like, I think of it, it comes from a very selfish place. Like, I don't want anyone to feel the way I have felt, and I don't want anyone to feel the way Morgan felt.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, point blank, like, I don't want anyone to lose their Morgan. Like, if we can do whatever we can to get this story out there, because so many people can relate to it, like, that's kind of where the conversation started. And ultimately there was, my dog is also in the background. Ultimately there was a barbecue with some of her former high school teammates, and they said, like, let's do something. Let's start a podcast. Let's do whatever we can. And let's start something in Morgan's honor. Like, if we're going to have to lose Morgan, which we have, like, let's make something good out of it. Like, let's not let this moment go to waste, and kind of like, what can we do for other people that wasn't done for Morgan, and how do we support them? And I think, like, the growth, I mean, we started in July of 2020 was when we kicked it off. And we're now, a little bit over 2 years in. The growth has been exponential. And, while, like, I think there's two parts to it. It's amazing. It's amazing to see all these young student athletes from, 14 years old to 25 years old, or like athletes without the student now, spreading awareness, talking about what they've gone through and why they're all bought in on Morgan's message and what it means to them. And the other part of it is, the reason it's growing is because there is such a need, right? And there is a demand for a community of people at your school or, in your friend group to be supportive and to be a listening ear and to kind of learn more and educate themselves about mental health and how to support. And yeah, I think the growth has been tremendous. The impact, I still just get like, it's unreal to see, like UVA men's lacrosse and Richmond men's lacrosse put stickers on their helmets, or, even like high schoolers who text photos and they're like, my stickers came, and, supporting just something that I am really bought in on, but, it's bigger than one person is really humbling and humbling. Yeah. Words are hard.
I can't think of a better way to honor your friend. I mean, I can't. And I think the fact that, if you think about the impact over 2 years, someone somewhere, and a lot of times we talk about for the one, I do this podcast for one person. I interview the guests that I do for one person. I share platforms like Morgan's Message for, if it's just one person, then it was worth it. It was worth it. It was worth all the time, whatever it might be. And I imagine you all feel that way. And I have to imagine that over the course of 2 years, someone somewhere made a different choice, or got the help that they needed, or told a friend, or reached out to a friend that they knew was struggling. Like, the impact is far beyond the stickers on helmets. And I'm so thankful that, like, our little high school here did that. But it's so much bigger than that. And I have to imagine over the course of 2 years, you all may never know this side of heaven, what impact you've made. It just has to be. And again, that's not, like you said, it's not selfishly like, hey, look how great we are. It's, the impact of, personally. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. I don't even know if I didn't go to Duke. So. I think I'm kidding. Sorry, I had to bring some levity to the conversation.
No. And I think this might be a little bit dark, but like, we get, student athletes who reach out and say like, I talked to my mom about my mental health and said that I'm struggling today because of,
right,
this story or that. And we've had parents even email and say, thank you for what you're doing.
100%.
My kid raised their hand and I had no idea what was going on. And I'm so glad that, they felt the courage so that I could help them because, God forbid they didn't raise their hand, who knows where we'd be. And I think those kind of stories, like, I get really sad. But I also am like, we helped one person.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, we helped someone else's Morgan. And I think that's super powerful. And just hearing, the impact that we've had. And even if we weren't hearing about it, I think that I still like to believe, even when we started, I was like, we're going to help someone. Like, even if it's one person, even if we put all our energy into this and, 6 months down the road, we can't keep this going. We'll at least have helped one person and it'll been worth it.
I have to share, I'll be as brief as I can. I think I shared this in my email to you all. I have a dear friend that one morning, on a Sunday morning at 8 something in the morning, I received a text and she had attempted to take her life and she was saying goodbye. Thankfully, another friend and I were able to get her where she needed to go. I'm just trying to be as brief as I can. And today she's alive. It's not about me. It's about the fact that today her life is amazing and she's happy and healthy, and the ripples of her being in this world are so much, they're just so amazing to watch. And so I share that because I think that's why I'm so passionate about this. I'm thankful that she sent me a text to say goodbye, and I'm glad it wasn't goodbye. It was just, let's get you taken care of. I don't know why I share that. I guess this is very near and dear to my heart, for reasons I've shared, and, that reason as well. I guess, so what are the resources? Like, what is Morgan's Message? What are all the ways that you all can help anyone that's listened to this episode tonight? What's the next step? If it's my student, if it's my son, my daughter, my wife, if I'm an athlete and I'm listening to it like that, there's so many ways that this can go because everyone's affected by it. So what's next?
Yeah. So we have the mental matchup that provides, stories, written and both on podcasts. So if you're looking to, kind of learn more about mental health or hear different perspectives and journeys through mental health, you can kind of look there. We have an ambassador program for Morgan's Message where you can apply and you can kind of talk and learn about mental health and spread it at your school. We've been partnering with the Kevin Love Fund.
I didn't know
Kevin
that.
Love.
I didn't know
yeah,
that. Love that.
To help pilot their education program that they just launched or are launching maybe officially next year. And that talks more about like, what you can be doing, tips and tricks and all of that good stuff, and just learning more about mental health in and of itself. We're not health professionals, so we don't offer any like counseling services, anything like that. But we do have a ton of services that you can go to on our website if you're looking for someone to talk to. But ultimately, we're trying to build a community by and for athletes is kind of our tagline. But ultimately, it's like, how do we support those around us who are struggling and kind of support them enough where they have bravery to raise their hand and ask for help and, get that help.
The web address for Morgan's Message is what?
www.morgansmessage.org. You can find us on Instagram at Morgan's Message.
And you're on Twitter, and I think you're on Facebook too, right?
Yes, and I think LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, even better.
Yeah.
Okay. So easy to find. Go to Morgan's Message. Are there I assume there's a contact form there or something they can fill out if they've heard this and need to talk to someone.
Yeah, if you want to get in touch, just a general inquiry, it's just info, INFO at morgansmessage.org. If you want to apply to be an ambassador, click the education tab. There's an intake form. And yeah, the info is kind of a catch-all, for lack of a better term.
Totally understood. And then the website again for your podcast.
thementalmatchup.com. And you can also find us through Morgan's Message site. And there's an intake form there if you want to submit a submission, or you can just email submission@morgansmessage.org.
And I haven't talked to Kat about this yet, but if all those seem too intimidating, please reach out to me at Aaron, AARON, at myunscripted.com. The last thing I always try to share is there is a hotline available, 988 on your phone. Like 911, it's just 988. So anyone that's listened to this, there's resources for you. And I think you said it, you're not counselors, those kind of things, but you will certainly do everything in your power, as will I, to get someone the help that they need. And I think that's the best way we can honor Morgan. I'll never know Morgan this side of heaven. I hope one day I can hug on her neck and tell her I'm honored to meet her. But I think the way we can best honor her is in these things. And I'm so thankful that you all are doing that, and that you followed the prompting to do such a thing and create this incredibly impactful movement that's happening. It's a movement. I know on your website there's a list of all the universities. There's chapter. Are they called? What are they called?
I think they're called chapters.
Okay.
I'm not heavily involved in the
chapters.
education piece,
Sure.
but I think they're chapters. Yeah.
Either way, there's connections.
Or campuses, maybe campuses, chapters. I don't know.
It's on the website. It's on the website. Welcome to Unscripted.
Go see and find out. Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. No, they're on the website. I know I saw them. I know there's one at Ohio State. And so I've asked a good friend of mine that I want to connect with you that we talked about offline that is at Ohio State. And so I want to make those connections as well. Look, if you're a college student listening to this, please find the university. And if there's not one, start one. I mean, it's just so important. It's so important. And I'm so thankful for you all. I'm thankful for your time tonight. Any last thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, I think, if anyone's listening, there's two things. And one thing is, I think don't make a permanent decision off of temporary feelings or a temporary situation. I think that's something that, I'm so glad I didn't make a permanent decision off of temporary feelings. Life is really beautiful, and sometimes it's not, sometimes it sucks,
Sure.
But for the most part, it is very beautiful. And the second part is a little spark can leave a mark. And so I kind of think that in twofold. One, it can go negative, right? If you're negative and you're kind of looking at the downsides, that can spread. But if you're positive and focused on the little things, the little wins, like getting that cup of coffee in the morning or being on time to class, that can also, it spreads and it's infectious. So anyone listening, try to be that smart spark that leaves a good mark. And yeah, like the last two pieces.
Kat, I want to tell you, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. But I believe you're honoring her in such a powerful and impactful way. And so thank you for that. Second, I'm glad you didn't make a quick response in a moment. And that you've, battled through yours, and life's what it is. There's probably going to be ups and downs and peaks and valleys, but I'm thankful that I'm having a conversation with you right now, and that you've weathered those storms to be here with me today. That means a lot to me. And, thank you. I guess that's the bottom line is thank you for everything. Thanks for being on here. One more time, can we run through the links?
Yes. thementalmatchup.com or the mental matchup on Instagram, morgansmessage.org, or Morgan's Message on Instagram. And then if you want to just get in touch, info, INFO at morgansmessage.org is your best source of truth.
And mine's Aaron at myunscripted.com. And again, dial 988 on your phone if it's an emergency. Those are all resources available to you. Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you much more in the future. And thank you. And thank everyone at the foundation on my behalf. Please thank them for all that they're doing. It's so important.
I will do. Thank you again for having me on and chatting. This is awesome.
I appreciate you. Go Heels. Sorry, I had to get one in there.
It's okay. I understand. It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.